Hello everyone and welcome to Blue Tengu's live game development show where we show everything that goes into making a game from concept to completion. If you've ever wanted to make a game, we hope this will help lower the barrier to entry, maybe give you the nudge needed to try it yourself. Coffee's still kicking in, so I might slur my words as I always do in the introduction, but even if you don't want to make a game, we hope you'll find some entertainment value in what we're doing here. All of the information about where you can find us is in the Twitch info down below or in our YouTube profile for those of you catching us later, but just in case, we're at www.bluetengu.com, btengu on Twitter, facebook.com Blue Tengu Studio, youtube.com Blue Tengu Studio for those of you watching the live stream with me now, like PandaBits, who's in here with the chat with me, or Twitch TV Blue Tengu for those of you catching us on YouTube. If you missed any episodes, you can catch them over at YouTube, but you shouldn't have any trouble following along even if you haven't seen one before. For those of you who haven't seen the show on Twitch or YouTube before, my name's Eric. I'm a game designer living over here in Japan who's trying to show you everything that goes into making a game for about 2 hours a week, including all of the ums and ahs and awkward debugging moments, of which I'm sure we'll have plenty today. The reason I'm showing it all as opposed to making the game first and scripting out a rehearsed tutorial is because I do want to lower that barrier so many of us feel towards making a game, and I hope inspire you to stick with it and go out and try it yourself. Thank you to everyone who dropped by last week and to all of those who watched the video on YouTube. We had a great chat going again, and I hope we'll have another good one today. For those of you here with me on Twitch, feel free to drop suggestions or ask questions at any time. May not be able to answer them right away because I am working, and if the chat gets going as usual, I might not be able to keep up sometimes. But I'll try to get to your questions, and if I can't, send me a private message here, leave a comment on our site or YouTube video, or send me an email at eric@bluetengu.com. That's Eric with a C. And I'll try to address it next time. If any of you are out there making something and you don't mind showing it off, send me a link to your stuff. I'd love to see it. If you're here with me in the live stream, feel free to post it up there in the messages. And at this time every week, just to let you know, for 2 hours I come onto Twitch TV to work on the game Project Spaghetti, well, for Season 1 anyway, which is a top-down 2D cowboy shooter where the bullets fired bounce around the screen with a pinball mechanic. Last week, started digging into the system parts for the day-night cycle reach task we had. Well, this week it's time to actually show the player that this is happening. Last week it was all on the system side, so, enemies were speeding up and things were happening, but there was absolutely no visual feedback that that was occurring. Also, it's a new month. It is April now, so I do want to go through the task list and kind of show where we're at in terms of number of tasks left and everything else. And let me go over there. Sorry I got a little bit of a late start because of Twitch doing some weird things on me. If you do hear some people screaming and shouting and stuff like that, it's probably the advertisement they're showing in Japan right now that just keeps popping up once in a while and ignores the mute settings. So that's what that is. I'm sure PandaBits heard that a few times. And yes, PandaBits did say we need the for the rooster. Yes, we do need that. We'll see if I can get to that. I have to find my notes on how to digitize my voice again, like the ready set start, ready set draw thing that I have at the beginning of the tutorial. Took my voice, put it into Audacity, and put it through a few filters to get it not sounding like me at all. So I'm going to have to try to do that for my horrible rooster call and see what I can do with that. And for PandaBits, who asked a question, yes, I did pick up Tales of Vesperia. It was cheap in Japan. And it is the 360 version. So yes, fill me in. I'm sure it'll take me a while to get to it because RPGs are, well, very long, as they are RPGs. But we'll definitely jump into that. Alright, let's jump over to the desktop here. Hopefully everything's set up okay. Let me try to bring this thing down a little bit. I have my chat windows popped up and stuff, but they're all at the bottom. Just try to keep them there so I know what real estate I have to work with on my screen here. So here we go. Project Spaghetti's task list over at Trello.com. You can search for Trello and Project Spaghetti and this should pop up. This week is week 40, which is episode 40, Bad Mood Rising. This is going to be all the visual stuff for the day-night cycle. Last week, it was all system stuff. There was a counter that kept track of the time. There was a game over when you reached the end of the time limit. All of those things were set really, really short for debugging purposes, and they're still set that way now. Enemies were modified based on time. I'll have to talk about that later. Score, the points were also going up based on time. And stop time for the tutorial and things like that, some system stuff. So this was all system stuff, but one thing that was in this list that we were doing was modifying the enemies based on time. And as I've had time to think about it, um, it's probably not going to make too much sense to the player. Yeah, all right, they can kind of get that if the music's speeding up, enemies are speeding up, that's fine, but I think it'll make more sense to the player to actually shift the enemies. And what I mean by that, I did actually post something on Twitter about that, but um, for example, there's two varieties of bad cowboys up to now. There's the red kind, which is the very basic one, then there's the green kind, which is a little faster. So what I could do is at a certain time limit shift the red enemies to green enemies, but then what do I do with the green enemies? So what I did with that was, in the meantime, since it's just a bunch of, using the paint bucket basically to shift the green enemy to a pink enemy, made a new enemy type, which is Baddest Cowboy now. Threw that object in GameMaker to get ready for today, because a lot of that stuff is stuff you've seen before, where it's just, going through every single layer in Photoshop, changing the color on the enemy, exporting those files, putting it into the sprites and stuff. You've seen it all before, you don't need to see it again. That way we can focus on this stuff today. Also prepared Sun Sprite, Moon Sprite, and did do some of the picture stuff on the Photoshop side, but let me show you that so you can see what I'm talking about. So let's see, town background. So I did update the town background. Before it was just one background picture, but now it's actually broken out into layers. So for example, there's a sky layer, there's a dirt layer, there's a background layer. And what this allows me to do is, when I do have a sun going down, it's going to allow it to come down into here and dip behind the background, whereas before that wouldn't have been possible. So I broke these images out, but I haven't put them over into GameMaker yet. That'll be the first step. But to also show you, it's not really something worth seeing, but here's the moon and the sun object. Very simple, just rough graphics to get it in there. Should be okay in terms of size and everything else. So let's jump into GameMaker. I'll show you where I'm at. Oh, goody! Another update for GameMaker. Yeah, these messages have been popping up just over and over and over and over again over the last week. GameMaker did have an update last week. I'm trying to remember who told me about it. Someone in the chat told me about it. Whether it was Bone Crusher or NeoZoom or someone, I think, told me about the update. It definitely said, yes, you want to update. And it did update for me, but I've been noticing a couple of problems with the update, which is kind of, and even though I've updated it however many times, it just keeps doing this every time I try to start GameMaker. So I guess while it's trying to update again, GameMaker, let me go over to the task list and go over some of the other stuff. So from last week, I did do a few things. These are all kind of smaller tasks that I had, but I did want to get them cleaned up. For example, the Scorpion wasn't actually having any special deflect kind of sound effects and things like that, so I did add that in. Also, the laser wasn't drawing past duct player, so I handled that. Aliens now have particles coming out of the hover device. I guess the big thing would be that enemies, before when you'd shoot an enemy, they just disappeared. But now I do actually spawn a corpse object so that they can die just the way the player does. So all of the enemies now have corpse objects, except for the snowmen, because the snowmen just explode. But I can show you that. Yes, install and relaunch. Let's see what happens. Of course it's going to update again. Of course it's going to update again. Good old GameMaker this week. Usually it's much better than this. This is the first week where the updates have gone crazy. They probably had a lot of bugs with their last update. I even, actually for the first time, sent a bug report based on GameMaker Studio. What was happening was something that worked before, after the upgrade stopped working, and it actually crashed the game. So obviously that deserves a bug report. I did find a workaround for it, so it does work, but thank goodness I checked that yesterday, because otherwise that would be what would be happening today. And PandaBits mentions, what the hell, the flashing? What is the flashing? Is something flashing on my end? I hope not. I would hate to annoy you guys. But let me stick back to my task list here. Other things were like animations for dying. Obviously, now that they have corpse, they have animations for dying. Also added a duck animation for the player. And the indicators, I was doing something really stupid with those arrow indicators that were showing up. Because the whole goal was just to get it to work, I basically had sprites for the arrow pointing left, right, up, and then all of the color variations for that. So that was overkill. All I really needed to do, thanks to image blend, was have two variations, one that points up, one that points right. Use mirroring to handle the one that goes left, and then just paint it over with the color that I need. So I squeezed all that stuff down into one object. And one more thing I did do was the score display. Depending on where the enemy died, the points that you got might actually appear off screen, so I made sure that those are always on screen. But those are the overtime tasks I did. And with this, let's put the sun and the moon in the game first, and then try to get this town in there. My allergies are kicking in because it's spring in Japan. Welcome to spring. Today's obviously, well, not obvious to you, I guess, but today's really bad weather in terms of just rainy and all that, so maybe it'll help my allergies, but what I've had is a build-up from the week, so you guys get to hear my sniffles and snorts, I'm sure, as we go through the show. Sorry about that in advance. So sun and moon, let's get that in there. Oh, yes, it is the first of the month, the first week of the month, and I have been kind of neglecting to do it the past 2 months, I think. But before every time I'd start a new month, I would go through and kind of figure out how many tasks I have left, how much time I had left, and figure out where I'm going to get to. And I did do that this time, thankfully. But this is week 40, and just to give you all the stats here, we have, in terms of hours are these things that I put on the tasks, like 0.25 for the sun and sprite. Those are my estimates on how long it's going to take to do these things. Doesn't actually mean that's how long it takes to do them. Some take longer, some take less. But in terms of the tasks that I definitely want to get done, there's 71.75 worth of those. And in addition to those, there are reach tasks. Reach tasks are things like, way down here at the bottom, like iOS support, Steam integration, titles, shooting range modes, different modes, maze modes, golden bullet systems, maze modes, adventure modes, things like that. That would definitely take a lot of time, probably wouldn't get to within the year that I have set for the plan. The one reach goal that I do want to get to is this crazy challenge mode, because that's one of the things that PandaBits, who's here in the chat with me, I think voted for. So I do want to get to that one. But, these main tasks, there's about 71.75 worth. And in terms of the rate I'm going at, that's in this week 26 to 39 stats. Episode burn down, in terms of what I did was, because the first half of the year, the tasks that I was doing then are very different than the types of tasks I'm doing the second half of the year, which are more brush-up tasks. Plus, I'm much better at estimating now. What I did was I ignored the first half of the year and started from January and calculated from there, which is why this is week 26 to 39. And right now it seems like I do tend to get about two of those hours worth done every episode, which is about 2 hours. It seems about right. Theoretically, I'm working at a faster pace because you've got all this chatting in the front and at the end and stuff like that, so I'm usually only working for about 1.5 hours. So still working a little fast. And in terms of overtime, there's more detailed statistics on this usually. I'm doing about 8 hours worth of tasks a week in overtime. Most of those are debugging, cleanup, things like that. That wouldn't be very interesting for you guys, or things like making that new enemy type, which you've seen before. Just try to do all that in the off. But according to that, it should be okay to get through all of these tasks and maybe a couple of reach tasks. At the moment, that seems to be where I'm at. I did also change the ordering a little bit to try and keep it in priority order. Like, I think having powered up versions of the ghosts, scorpions, aliens, gonna have to do that in a way, so they're not really reach tasks anymore. Gonna have to do that because of this day-night cycle. So those actually should go up into the main list. but might be something I do in overtime. But let's jump into the game. I want to show you where I'm at right now. And Panabits mentions the weather sounds like West Coast Canada, but not Canada, just rainy. Yeah, Japan's very rainy. It's always rainy here. They did have the cherry blossoms blooming, so of course it rained and washed them all away before anyone could have their parties this weekend. And I also upped the resolution on this a little bit so that you guys can see a better version of the game, more zoomed in version. So here's the game so far. We do have the tutorial. This is that digitized voice that I was mentioning before, so it could get a rooster call with that voice. That'd be very weird. Be worth trying though. So as you can see, just for a few seconds, there is an enemy body kind of lying there after the bullet hits them. So that's new. And those arrow indicators look the same, but they take a lot less memory now, because there's only one sprite to do them, even though they're multicolors. Because I didn't know about image blend when I first started out with GameMaker, so that's something that has saved me a lot of time. I should probably give myself invincibility so I don't die while I'm chatting here. Okay, so that's the basic of the game. There are other levels too. There's the graveyard level, where you have to hit the bell to get the ghosts, and they have corpses too. Look like little sheets on the ground. There's a desert level where you can kind of hit these cacti, and you have to try to use them in a way and bounce bullets off to get the scorpions to die, because the scorpions are always facing you, but the front of them can't be hurt. And if you do shoot them while they're facing you, they do start charging you. So the whole thing is to try and, strategically get around them with bullets and things like that. And there's the alien level. They should have the little hover particles coming out of them. Might be a little hard for you to see, but it is there. Didn't want to make it, too much of an effect, because then it'd be kind of overkill. And they have corpses too, so there you go. But the whole goal is to try and get them to bounce the lasers off those crystals and hit their shields, their own shields, to down their shields, because that gives you the chance to kill them. And then we've got the Christmas special level. Like if you see the Twitter account and you see the Christmas episode that's pinned to the top, that's what we did in that one. This is what we did in that one. We've got snowmen. If you shoot their head, they no longer know where you are, so they just wander around randomly. The smaller the snowman, the faster they move. So if you end up shooting them in a way that just leaves their head, then they become really, 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 really fast and hard to shoot. So you don't want to do that. The goal is to get headshots if you can. And finally, there's the boss, who's a giant version of the cowboys, purple, which is actually kind of important. I'll explain why. The boss is, unlike other cowboys, just always ducks unless he just shot. So the goal is to just dodge his bullets until he fires and then try to shoot then. Thankfully I've got invincibility on so I can actually kill him. He's definitely a boss fight. There's no easy way to go about this. Obviously there's a ton of bullets flying around the screen because I've got unlimited lives and ammo on him now. As he gets injured, he gets harder and harder to kill. And he fires more bullets. Almost got him. So, I mean, in this stage, the main goal is probably not to try and shoot him yourself, but to try and dodge as many bullets as possible until he shoots himself, basically. And the reason I got the game over is that time limit. It's right now set to a minute, which is really short, but there's the day-night cycle kind of kicking into the background there. So let's get into it. First thing is to bring that sun and moon in here. So where do I want to put that? I guess we'll just create a new group, sprite group solar bodies. Let's see. Let's just call it sun. If I throw the moon sprite in there, it's not going to confuse me. So sprite sun. Let's keep it simple. And let's bring that thing in. I think it's in backgrounds. Yes, there we go. Real simple, obviously. There doesn't need to be any collision on it, but we probably do want to have the origin in the middle so that it does come down the middle there. And let's do the moon. SPR moon. In the middle. Okay, good. So now we've got the sun and the moon. The other thing will be, let's see, rooms. Because I'm going to have to modify this. Right now it's just using one background. BG Town, which is just a full screen, but what I'm going to need to do is have the sky be the background, because I never want anything behind the sky, but I would want buildings and the dirt to be their own sprite, so I have to do that. I guess, these were simple tasks. Let's get those out of the way. Let's at least feel like we're making some progress here, right? So those got put into the game. Now it's to break the town up here. Let's see what we can do with that. Backgrounds. Let's just do a new background first. Sky blue. Since I assume I'm going to have the night sky too. Maybe I should just call it sky day, actually. Sky day. That's easier to remember. Because if I do want to change the color later, I can do that. And that's fine, being up in the right. So now for town, let's change the background to the sky. Sky day. Whoa, why is it adding an alien? Please don't do that. Oh, okay, I need to add a buffer onto the left. Okay, I do need to do that. Just like I think I do that for these other ones. Yeah, I do add something on the left, about 24 pixels worth on the left, so I need to edit this. Let's see. I need to resize it. Let's see, I think that means it'll move right. 3. I don't want to keep the aspect ratio. 4:4. There we go. That should do it. Now it should be okay. There we go. Yeah, it's right in the middle there. The dirt obviously disappeared, but I'm going to have to put that in as a sprite. And the reason is because I want the sun to be able to dip behind that, so I can't just use it as a background. Panda bits. Mentions an awesome idea with the sun. Yes, put a little baby face in the sun and get the Teletubbies lawyers after me. Yeah, that could be tricky. Was actually thinking about putting a face in the sun and the moon. I'll try to avoid the baby face though, because I don't want the Teletubbies lawyers after me. That would be the worst way for a game company to go down. Sued by Teletubbies. Yeah, I'd have to just leave games after that. So let's see. Objects, I'm going to have to put them in as an object, I think, because they are a sprite. And you can't just deal with sprites directly unless they're backgrounds. So I have to set up the town stuff as its own sprite first. So let's see, group backgrounds, sprite backgrounds, create sprite, and let's grab that stuff. I think desert field's the dirt part. And let's see. Unlike the background, I guess I could just offset this by hand. So that's not too bad. And I think I'll keep the origin in the upper left so it's easier to move it to the right. All I have to do is add 24 to X and it should shift over. Let's see. Well, actually, I do need to name this something that makes sense. So let's see. Sprite desert ground. Ground desert. Try to keep the general categories to the left so they kind of group together. And what else do I need? The buildings, yes, the buildings. Create sprite. What would you call it? Horizon? Buildings. Just so that later I can have, you know, the graveyard version, the UFO version. Town background, town buildings, there we go. There's that. And again, I'll keep the origin to the upper left to make it easy to calculate. Yeah, in fact, I could save some sprite real estate by cutting off this transparent stuff and shifting it down, but I'm not going to worry about that for now. That's just to make it more efficient. And PandaBits with another good idea for the sun. Call the sun Steve and give him glasses. Ruins the tone, but it adds some personality to a flaming ball of plasma, which is a win-win. Yes, it is. Yeah, alright, I'll let that run around in my head a little bit. Should be interesting to do that. Yeah, because I want to have some expression on the sun, you know. If it's plus it's actually going to be good information to the player too. If the sun starts out, well, kind of like the snowmen do. When there's 3 balls on the snowmen, they start out smiley, but as you shoot them, they go to like just a, you know, a grimace and then like a frown. Could be the same thing with the sun, like if there are 2 stages, have the sun start out smiling, and then when it shifts to the more dangerous version of the day, it suddenly starts frowning. That would be instant visual feedback to the player saying things are about to get tougher. So that's actually a really good idea. So let's see, sprite, ground, desert, and buildings. Unfortunately, I don't think I can put a sprite just right into the game. I do need an object for it because objects are the things that have all the information in them, like x coordinates and y coordinates. So don't think I can get away with just sprites. So let's make an object. BG group. In fact, let me rename this so that it kind of matches. BG. There we go. And let's see, add an object. Let's keep it simple. Horizon buildings. And add the same thing. Horizon buildings. Head event creates. And the only thing I want to do in the create event, oh well, this is new. You upgrade your version and things just kind of sneak in here. This is completely new. It's test health score caption. No idea what that is, but if you're using GameMaker and you upgraded this week, this is now in your UI. Either that or they just changed the icon. I don't know. Maybe it's been there the whole time. Is there anything else that's kind of snuck into here? The fun part about upgrading. Never know what's going to happen. Alright, well, looks like that's the only major thing. So let's see, we want to move this to the right by 24 pixels, so let's do that when it's created, so it should pop over. And depth, obviously it has to be behind pretty much everything else except for the sun, so it has to have a really deep depth. What else has depth? I think the bumpers all have 0. No, they have 50. Okay, 50. Actually, let me change this to 50. Keep them consistent. Hopefully I'm not screwing anything up in the game. It's been working for the barrels, so I assume it works for the other stuff too. What depth is in GameMaker is when it draws a sprite. Use my paintbrush example here. If there's multiple sprites on top of each other, like you've got this dude here, say his depth is, let's see if I can remember which way is which. If it's low, like if it's 0, then he gets drawn on top of the things that are like 20. So those will be like in the background here. If this is another sprite, that's 20. But let me double check that. But it's basically just the way of layering which sprites and determining which ones go on top. But I need to look that up because I forget every time. I think the lower it is, the the closer it is to the camera. Sprite layer. I'm surprised that that does not come up first. Well, here's an easy way for me to find out. I know I have the player in the front, as in the front as possible. So 10. Okay, so yeah, the lower it is, the closer to the camera. So I want to have a high depth for the background stuff, because there's not a whole lot that it's going to be in front of, just the sun, pretty much. So let's go with something crazy like 500. And let's also make the other thing. Well, let's duplicate this. Let's see, what's the other thing? Ground, desert. I hope I didn't use two S's in the sprite I had up there. Otherwise, there's going to be desert all over the ground. Yeah, that should be fine. And the same thing with shifting over to the right. And later on, I can shift it down and save some of those transparent pixels. But that should be okay. Let's see. And I have to put those into the room itself as well. So let's see. Horizon buildings. And let's see. I should probably be a little more precise with this. Actually, I don't need to use the modifying stuff at all. This should actually be much easier than I thought it would be. Let me see if I can undo some of this. Alright, well I can't, so let's delete it. Yeah, I don't have to worry about all that because I'm manually placing it in the room, so let's save ourselves some space here. Edit the sprite, transform, crop. No, I don't want to crop the whole thing. Resize the canvas. Let's see, height. Let's try 100. I should probably pick which direction it gets cropped to. Do you want it to go? Let's see, I'm moving it right. Let's try down first. No, that is not the direction I want to go. Up is the direction I want to go. Okay, up. 100. There we go. Getting closer. Let's try 80. Getting there. Later on, I'll do this in Photoshop to make sure I get it just right, and so I don't bring in the wrong thing in the future. 70. Okay, there we go. That's good. 70. That's that. And ground, I can do the opposite, hopefully. Resize canvas. Since it's 70 high, let's see, 240 minus 70 should be 170. 170, and then if I do down, that should be just right, hopefully. And now let's drag them into the town. Save me a little bit of space. And, you know, in the future I could actually use tiles instead of just having a giant, you know, sprite with the dirt, because that's pretty inefficient for something that just repeats itself. So let's see, objects, there we go. So ground, desert, first off. And I want to be somewhat precise with this, so let's see, 0, 24, and 70. Perfect. Okay. And horizon buildings, they'll be even easier. 24 and 0. So there we go. It's pretty much back to the way it was before. I don't want multiples. Pretty much back to the way it was before. Next thing is going to be the object with the sun. Let's see. With the sun, let me go to an let's make those objects first, I guess. Sun. Easy enough. Duplicate moon. And I just have to be careful what depth I put these at. I put the other one at 500, so as long as these are below that, it should be okay. So let's just do 250 or something like that. And 250. So they'll appear behind pretty much everything except for the dirt and all that. And then the actual object, where to spawn it. Let's start off with spawning it someplace that makes sense. Let me just, to get some good coordinates here, let me just fiddle around with it. Let's see, sun. Let's put a sun in there. Obviously want to start it pretty much close to the top. That is a big sun. So let's see, my room is theoretically 320 by 240, I think. Yes, 320, so the middle of that would be 160 plus 24, because it's offset. So 184 should be the middle. And let's see, height-wise, that looks okay. Yeah, alright, 24. That's easy to remember, because it's 24 offset to the right, so 24 down as well. So 184 by 24 is something I have to remember. Let me write that down somewhere. 184 by 24. Okay. Let's see, room. Let me make sure my Twitch feed is actually working here. It might not be. Well, let's see. Why is this happening? Wow, okay. Huh. Well, alright, this is a Twitch problem. I hope that my video is okay, because otherwise it's going to be a lot of blank stuff. Let me see. Can I just reload this? If any of you are watching this stream, send me a message really quick to make sure that there's actually video, because right now all I see is a black screen. Let me see. Okay, well, PandaBits did mention it is working. So Twitch is doing something really weird to me right now. Watching the feed as I see it, as well, you could probably see it there too. It shows like one person, which would be me, and it shows a black screen. So, okay, if it's a refresh problem, I'm not going to worry about it. As long as you guys can see it, I'll just have faith that you're out there. Yeah, manually reload. Let's just try that. That kind of worries me. Let me just bring up another Twitch window, actually. So you might get another of my Japanese advertisements. So let's see what they have to sell me today. There you go. So when you heard, like, PandaBits, when you heard, like, the sound of people laughing, this is what it was from. From Lenoa Happiness. Fabric softener. Well, there you go. There's a big audience for Twitch fabric softener. Gamers do like their fabric softener. Yes. Great advertisement. Interesting market. Yeah, and PandaBits is who's now seeing the ad is asking, what is that? Yes, it's for fabric softener. Well, there you go. I'm sure you get something a little more targeted to your audience in the States or in Canada, for example. Let's see. All right, where was I? Adding fabric softener objects. No. Adding sun objects. So let's see. I need to do that inside of probably. I could probably do it just inside of here, actually. That would make the most sense, because I was thinking if you had to do it in Room Manager, but it might make more sense to do it in the room itself. So let's do it here first. If I find some limitation with it, I'll worry about it then. Not sure why this is appearing in front of other stuff, because theoretically the town should be lower priority than this. But let's see what happens in game. So let's see, what were my numbers? 184 by 24. Oh, I love the reaction to that advertisement. Alright, let's try the sun. Yeah, why don't we have those hats? Welcome to Japan. Crazy stuff. Let's see. So we've got the sun object. Let's just see what it looks like in game. Let's make sure nothing's going crazy. Because right now it's just objects and backgrounds, so there shouldn't be any gameplay stuff that I need to update. There it is. But it is in front of the buildings. So why is that happening? Horizon buildings should be depth 500. Sun is depth 250. Am I going in the wrong direction here? Maybe I am. Let me double check. So depth. GameMaker. Let's see if I can just get away with looking for depth. There we go. Yeah, high depth should mean that it's drawn further away from the player. Yeah, like the example here, depth 500 should be behind 250. For some reason that is not happening though. I don't think there's anything inside of here that does that. But maybe because I added the objects before doing the depth stuff? Huh. Well, that's very, very weird. Because this is 500, so it should be drawing behind the sun. Oh, whoops. Okay. The sun needs to be in the back. My bad. Okay, I was being silly. All right. GameMaker's working just fine. Yeah, Panavits. Yeah, it's my fault. I was being silly in my logic. The sun actually has to be the furthest thing back because the sky is the background. The sun needs to be in front of. Well, let's get my hands so that they make sense to you. You've got the sky background, then you have the sun, then you have the buildings in the ground. So I was just getting things mixed up in my head. This should work. This should actually have the sun behind that water tower. Here we go. There we go. Okay. So yeah, the sun is there. It's behind the water tower. Now I just have to get it sinking down. So let's see. Before I was doing all that stuff in Room Manager, I think. Actors, bumpers, system, Room Manager. This handles all of the enemies and everything else that come out in the room. And I think I was doing it at the end of step. Yes, good thing. Would hate to be doing this a month later and forget where I was doing everything. Thankfully, it was just last week. One good reason to group similar tasks together. So what I need to do is probably... Where am I incrementing a counter? Yes, I'm doing it here. So I could either do the drop part inside of Sun, or I could do it inside of Room Manager. Which one makes more sense? Probably Room Manager because it's the one that's keeping track of time. So let's add a different script so I don't have too much going on in one script. Handle the Celestial Body Dropping. There we go. That's a cool name for a script. Celestial Body Dropping. Alright, here we go. So, in the future I'm going to have either a sun or a moon, so I'm going to need to know which one it is. Probably, the easiest way to do that is going to be to have just... I think I may actually be able to tell if I look at one of these scripts up here. Let's see, settings, game. Maybe it is in Room Manager. Settings. Maybe it's something that's room start. I'll bet it's in here. Because there's something that tells me whether it's a light stage or a dark stage. Yes, global room dark equals false or true. I was using this for the UI stuff, like on dark stages, the score and all those text elements are displayed in white to make sure that you can see them, and then on light stages they're displayed in dark blue. So as long as I use global room dark, I can tell if it's going to be a sun or a moon. So let's copy this so I don't misspell it. And let's use that inside of that room manager. Which script was it? Yes, celestial body dropping. There we go. So let's see. If global room dark equals false, then it's a sun because it's not a dark room. So let's see. Instance find. Well, I'm only gonna have one sun, hopefully. Unless I have a Tatooine stage or something like that, I'm only gonna have one sun. So I only have to worry about that. And then I'm going to have to change its Y to something. But let's leave that for now. PandaBits mentions... yes, Celestial Body Drop does sound like something that would be in a JRPG. I would imagine it's something that you probably find off of a hidden boss somewhere. And you can use against the last boss in the game, but there's no point to doing that because the hidden boss in the game was much more difficult to defeat than the actual last boss in the game anyway. Final Fantasy style. I'm sure that's where you would pick up Celestial Body Drop. Okay, so time elapse. So we've got RM stage time. And we don't want the sun to just drop down. We want it to be subtle. But it's going to depend on this stuff in time-elapse events. Because there's a time stage 1 and a time stage 2. And a time stage end. So I guess this is the goal. The sun should disappear behind the horizon about when it gets to here. So that should be the calculation. Yeah. Alright, let's keep that there so I can remember it. Still kind of waffling about whether it's better to put this in the sun object or not. It is a room managing thing, so it doesn't feel like it makes sense to put it inside the sun object, but maybe it is. Yeah, let's see. PandaBits also mentions that it's a German suplex move in a Mega Man game. Celestial Body Drop, yes. Yeah, I could see that. And PandaBits also mentions it's like the Hadouken. Yeah, just seeing you write that makes me want to do the digitized version of Hadouken. Let's see. So I want to be able to have the sun disappear behind the horizon when it hits that. So I guess I need to figure out when that's going to be. Let's fiddle with the sun here. So it's going to be around behind the horizon about there. So why 90? Whoa. Okay, that's nice. My sun disappeared on me. Alright, so 90. About 90 is when it drops behind the horizon. So let's see, 360, 320, 160, 184. Let's get back to where it was. Okay. So the final goal is going to be y is 90. So to do this, yeah, maybe it is better to put it in sun. Otherwise I have to do the calculation in here every time. I don't know. Gonna keep waffling on this until the very end, aren't I? Alright, let's put it in sun. Let's put it in sun. Logically, it might make more sense to have it in Room Manager, but I think in sun it's just going to be cleaner. So let's do this there, and then add step, and then probably have this Celestial Body dropping script in here. Now, alright, sorry, I will go with Room Manager. Because I'm going to be using the same code for sun and moon, so there's no point in doing that. Let's see, so I need to divide 90 minus 24 Well, let's see, I've got 24 as a starting point, so 24 plus the step, and the step is going to be 90 minus 24 divided by time stage end times room speed. So that's how many frames it takes for the stage to end. So I need to have this happen over that period of time. So let's see, 90. 90 is an arbitrary number, so I'm just going to have to hard code that one in. 24 is also arbitrary, so let's just calculate that. There's no point in having GameMaker do simple math for me. 66, well, there we go, root 66. Getting my kicks. Alright, so 66 divided by time stage end times room speed. And I should only have to do this calculation once, so I should probably do this somewhere at room start. So let's do RM. Let's call it sun step, even though it might be the moon. And let's put this in room start, room create. Since it's all constants and room speeds and stuff like that, let's put this inside of create. There's no point in doing it every time the room starts. So RM sun step. There we go. That's how far down on the Y direction it should go every step. In fact, let's call it celestial step. Let's keep it fancy. Alright, so celestial step, RM celestial step. Clean this up a little bit. Plus equals. Boom, and then I can get rid of all this. There we go. And Bone Crusher stops by. Hello, Bone Crusher. Thank you for joining us. Right now, just to give you a quick look at what we're doing here. Following off what we did last week with all the system stuff on the time elapse, we're doing actually the visuals this week, which means going over here and having a sun that actually drops behind the horizon as time passes. So that's what I'm working on getting started now. Got all the sprites and visuals in the game. Now it's just getting the sun to actually move down the appropriate amount every step. And theoretically, this should do it. Let's find out what happens. Hopefully I don't get a problem here. Good chance to drink water. I've been chatty this morning. Okay. Get my window up there so you guys can see it. And there we go. Oh, because I'm still calling it Sunstep somewhere. Alright, well there we go. That's what happens when I try to get fancy with my variable names. Where am I doing that? Create? In here. Alright. Yeah, I don't need that anymore. Just some leftover garbage I brought with me from the script. Well, let's see if that sun actually drops. Time doesn't start until this tutorial ends, so the sun shouldn't be moving now, which is actually good. I wasn't even thinking about that, but it should not be moving now, which is working fine. Which is a good reason not to have it inside the sun object, so I feel justified now. Now time should start moving. But the sun is not moving. As far as I can tell. Let me turn on invincibility and check. Doesn't seem like it's moving. Maybe those steps are just too small for it to actually calculate. Oh, there we go. Now it's kicking. Oh! Okay, let me pause and explain. Time does not start until all of the enemies have come out onto the stage. That is why the sun was not moving right off the bat. Now it's moving. And each stage only lasts, well, for debugging purposes, only 60 seconds right now. So assuming this green cowboy can survive, I'll try to keep him alive by taking some bullets for him like a good Secret Service agent. So theoretically, when we hit the 60-second mark, that sun should disappear behind the horizon, and it should be game over. One problem with the sun being yellow is that the fence is also yellow, which I'm seeing now. I should probably make the fence brown so that it makes sense, because otherwise it looks like the sun's kind of in front of the fence. It's an interesting gameplay mechanic, trying to take the bullets that they're shooting. And we should get game over real soon. There we go. Awesome. It actually worked. Alright. I like that. I like it when things actually work. It's a good change of pace. So it stays up there until enemies stop appearing. What I could do, theoretically, is have the sun go up as the enemies appear and then start going down when they're done appearing. That's one possibility. It would give some interesting information to the player as well. Because if they see that the sun has reached the top, then they know, alright, these are all the enemies I have to deal with. By the way, this pink guy was the one I added, the baddest cowboy. Left him in there by mistake, but theoretically when the sun reaches a certain point, all the enemies are going to shift to more difficult versions. So the green ones are going to shift to that pink one, the red ones are going to shift to the green one. Next is changing celestial body color because it looks a bit odd when it is going down, but it is working, yes. I'm going to have to change probably lighting on the stage and things like that as well. Change the alpha of like some nighttime filter over the stage to make sure it feels like it's actually becoming night. But that's something we can worry about later, as you said. So let's see, what would be the next step? I guess to shift the enemies might be the next step. Also getting the moon to work on the other stages would be an interesting way to go, but then I'd have to break all these backgrounds out, so I think I'll leave the other stages alone for now and just work on the town one. So let's see, let's work on shifting the enemies over first. If I were, let me just check the script here. If I were to calculate how much time it takes for all of the enemies to come out, like here for example, let me change that baddest cowboy to just bad cowboy again. If ignoring the tutorial, if I just did the normal stage, it would be 5, 9, 14, 16, 19, 21 seconds before the sun starts to drop, which means I could have the sun going up for 21 seconds. Yeah, I don't know. But then you're starting and it's not light, so that kind of takes me off of that. Maybe, like we talked about earlier, the facial expressions are the way to do it. Just start the sun out smiling, and then when the last enemy comes out, the sun frowns and starts to go down. That might be the best way to do it, because otherwise you have to start kind of like at dusk or something, and it's kind of this dark stage, and then all of a sudden when all the enemies come out, it's high noon and then it starts dropping. That'd be kind of odd to me. So it's probably better to start it up at the top and dip it down, but the player does need information about when that sun's going to start dropping, because otherwise you don't notice it until it starts to fall. So I won't worry about that for now. I'll try to cover that with like facial expressions on the sun. So let's get the enemies shifting if we can. So that would be down here in this time elapse event. So right now what I'm doing is everything manually, like actually, let's bring that up so you guys can see it. Basically it just checks for enemies, and if there are enemies it ups their base speed, their score values, their dodge weights and frequencies. But what that means is the red enemies are still look red, but they're just moving faster and shooting faster. What I would rather do is change the red enemies to green enemies, so that's what needs to happen here. I know GameMaker has a function to do that, so let me check it. There's some kind of instance replace, object type replace or something. inside of GameMaker that does that. And Panovitz is going to give me an awesome image here. Perfect faces for the sun. Yes, there we go. Let me keep that. The sun has to have some nice eyebrows. Yes, if I can get those done in pixel art. Let me keep this over here. I'll use that for my reference. Oh yes, let me do what I was originally looking for. Replace an object. There we go. Instance change. There's the function I want. Instance change. Let me just make sure that is the one I want, because sometimes when I look on message boards, they give me the wrong answers. It is the internet. You don't have to be speaking the truth to speak on the internet, so. But it looks like in this case, the person was speaking the truth. So the new object, the calling object, will change into whether to perform that new object's create and destroy events. Interesting. Let me check whether it's worth doing that. For the enemies, let's see. Bad Cowboy. The one that's going to get changed out is the Bad Cowboy, so actor, Bad Cowboy, Badder Cowboy, for example. In the script create, it sets all of these things, which it should do. And in destroy, what does it do? Just cleans up the path. But does create, I think create does introduce a new path, so I should be able to get away with using the create and destroy events. So I want that to be true. Let's try it out. Instance change, there we go. So jumping back into Room Manager, step, time-elapse events. Okay, so this will be interesting. In fact, I don't need any of this. Let's ignore all the enemies and whatnot for now. And with Bad Cowboy, with just means use any Bad Cowboy instances as the thing you're performing functions on. So change that to a Badder Cowboy and perform create and destroy events true. Let's try that. And do the same thing with, let's work backwards. Because otherwise a Bad Cowboy might change to a Badder Cowboy and then the next step get changed into a Baddest Cowboy, so that's not good. So let's do the Badder Cowboy one first, and then go to the Bad Cowboy. That should be okay order-wise. And since we do have a step 2, let's comment all this out. And let's do it again. Though probably don't want to do it twice, probably only want to do it once, like change the level so that it looks like it's getting darker, and at that time shift all the enemies over and just do that once. Because otherwise I have to make a 4th enemy, and here's the problem with making a 4th enemy. Let me show you. This is the problem if I try to make a 4th enemy. Right now, I'm using the Commodore 64 color palette, which means these are the colors I get to use. The player is light blue. The dirt is using these 3 shades of brown, like yellow, tan, and brown. So that basically leaves purple, which is the boss, red, green, and pink, which we're using now. And the blues are too close to the player, so it look like an ally, which just leaves grays and whites. So yeah, I could theoretically make a 4th enemy that's like white or gray or something, but probably don't want to do that. Make sure I get my GameMaker window up there so you guys can see it, because there's debugging information that comes down in here. Let's just see if the time elapse does change the instances there. Yeah, use a good chartreuse for the enemies. Yeah, and blue with a different coloration than player. Maybe dark blue would work okay, because you wouldn't mistake that for the player. But I think that'd be just too much for players anyway, to have 4 levels of enemies. So 3 seems like a pretty good amount, especially if you only have 2 of them coming out in the beginning. Let me turn on invincibility here. And I'll do my best to keep these enemies alive, because I need both to see that this is working, red and green. Theoretically, if I hide behind barrels, they shouldn't shoot at me, so that'll help a little bit. Okay, well, they did get replaced. I like the way they just stand there for a while, though. So they do get replaced, but something's going on with their logic that's breaking their flow. That makes them just do this freaky, like, stand there like a zombie thing until they get orders to move. Which is interesting. Yeah, because I'm not doing anything else, it's hard to tell when that shift is occurring, but obviously all the enemies are pink now, which means they've all been transformed. Why would they stop? I'm sure it has to do with the pathing stuff. The fact that they're getting created. In fact, there might be a delay that I've actually introduced to make sure that they don't start moving right away. That could be it. But before I do that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go on break real quick so I can recharge my voice. Things are kind of working, which is good. Things are going along pretty well. The visuals change when the time crunch starts. That is working. The town is broken up so that the sun does go behind. Need to fix the fence and stuff, so that's still in there. That won't take long. Town, change fence color. Also, well, let's see. I think I have tasks for that. Yeah, sun's bright polished, moon's bright polished. Let me add a comment in here. Add a face. Smile, frown. And do that for the moon as well. Add a face. Smile, frown. And panda bits. Yeah, panda bits mentioned, yeah, it's probably a pathing issue. I think it is, because I think I have a delay that goes on with the enemies. And panda bits also gave the great idea of actually having a jingle when the enemies change, which is actually an awesome, awesome idea. Need to do that. Need to make the sound too, so let's see. Sound effects, jingle, well, let's see. Jingle, sound effects, transition, day-night transition. Sound effects jingle. Let's do that. Yeah, I'll do that after the break, actually. That's something that'll make a big difference, so I think we should do that ASAP. And change the fence color. Yeah, it's rough graphics, so let's do that. Let's see, change the fence color, daylight, and then debug. Debug. Enemies stop on instance. What was it? Instance change. So I'll need to look into that. So I think I need to do that. But the whole changing enemies over idea, actually, I'm pretty sure the reason it floated around in my head is because of this game, which I was obsessed with as a kid. Let's see if I can find the Commodore version, because if I'm making a Commodore game, it's probably wise to use the Commodore version. Let's see. Long play Mr. Deuce Castle. There we go. Thanks to the internet, everything is available. And Bone Crusher mentions, do you like the idea of pinball bullets? Definitely adds originality. Thank you. I'm not even sure where the idea originally came from, because I think I started with the cowboy game idea. Actually, let me turn off the music just in case it like puts me into like some copyright thing on YouTube later when I put the video up. I don't want to just have this whole video just say, you know, you can't put this on YouTube because of some video that I'm playing. But I think I started with the cowboy idea, but I'm not sure where the bouncing bullet idea came from after that. Some inspiration came from it, but yeah, it's definitely cool. One thing later I'm planning on doing with the bumpers as well is to actually have them ring and respond and actually give you points when you bounce the bullets off of them. Because if I do have a time limit, that means I can limit the amount of players points can just milk out of the game. So that could work. But let's see. Without the sound, it's a little hard to show you, but let me see if I can. Unfortunately, this player is probably too good to show you what actually goes on in this, but maybe. Yeah, the player is just too good. Let's see. Let's try to get one of the harder levels. Maybe they'll have the problem here. There. Yeah. Okay. There we go. Or did they start out that way? Yeah, I need to find someone who's not good at this game, because what happens, let me explain what happens with this, with the Mr. Do's Castle game. As you can see, you're running around, you're smashing blocks, you're trying to kill all these like monsters that are there. But what happens is, oh, there we go. Happened there. You can smash a brick, they'll fall into the hole and stay in there for a little while as they try to wriggle out of it. But if you do that too many times, what happens is you've got the basic monsters, which are brown and they're kind of slow and they come at you and whatever. But once they wriggle out once, they become, I think, the green monster. And then if they wriggle out twice, they become this blue monster. And it makes it harder and harder and harder because they get faster. And once the screen is just all blue monsters, it's almost impossible. So that's probably where that idea originated from, to switch the actual enemy types based on like day-night cycle. Like as the time goes on, you start off with the easy red enemies and then just everyone's pink and it's chaos, but there's a chance to get a lot of points out of it. So Mr. Do's Castle, great game. If you do have a chance to play it, recommend it. It's one of my favorites. Gave me nightmares as a kid because I always thought blue monsters were coming after me, but that's what I get for being a kid and playing video games. So, I am going to take a quick break, which means showing the animated short that I always do. It should be about 7 minutes this week, but I will be back after the break to try and finish off these tasks here, starting with, let me start with the sound effect. So I'm going to use BFXR to make a sound effect to try and do that day-night transition jingle. May have to actually make a musical jingle out of it. But I'll start with just a sound effect and see how that is, just to give me a placeholder at least. And Decent Scrimp drops by. Before I go on break, hi Decent Scrimp. Yes, getting a plug-in for the Commodore 64, of course! Favorite system ever. My entire game life is probably formed by the Commodore 64 with some minor influences from Nintendo and Genesis and Lynx of all things. But yes, the Commodore 64 is definitely where I probably spent the most of my childhood. And Mr. Do's Castle is awesome. Mr. Do, actually, speaking of where I got the bullet bouncing mechanic, this is probably where I got it originally. Let's show Mr. Do before I go on break. Of course, no idea is original. So let's see, where can I get someone that's not going to be chatting the whole time. Let me mute this just in case their sound effects do something. Mr. Do, originally, basically it's kind of like a Dig Dug-ish game. You're kind of around here, you can dig through here, grab cherries, drop things. It's very much Dig Dug, so I don't feel too bad about borrowing it from Mr. Do because it's pretty much Dig Dug. But you do have this ball. You only have one ball. You throw it, it bounces around in the maze until it hits something or comes back to you. When it hits something, you get a new ball. If it comes back to you, you grab the ball and you have a new one. So the whole thing was trying to make sure that you only use the ball when you absolutely have to. But obviously, because of the tunnel approach, the ball would bounce around and eventually reach enemies. This is probably why the whole bullet bouncing mechanic was in my head in the first place. And Bone Crusher mentions that you have this Commodore 64 and an Amiga 500. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yes, they were great systems. Bone Crusher, while I go on break, what are some of your favorite like Commodore 64 games? Because I haven't played probably all of them, but I've played a lot of them, and I'm just kind of curious, like, what are your favorite Commodore 64 memories? Unfortunately, I never had an Amiga, so I know some of the games on the Amiga, but I've never played them myself. But Commodore 64, I'd definitely be interested in what games you thought were your favorites on the system. And if anyone else had a Commodore 64, definitely chime in. But that's enough, Mr. Do. I will take my break and come back and add the sound effect and try to figure out what's going on with the enemies. So I will see you in a moment. Let me jump off the desktop there. Okay, so I will be right back. Thank you for waiting while I took that quick break. Maybe not so quick to some of you. For those of you who didn't catch the intro, this is Blue Tengu's live game development show where we show everything that goes into making a game from concept to completion. All of the information about where you can find us is in the Twitch info down below, or in our YouTube profile for those of you catching us later. But just in case, we're www. I hope I got 3 W's in there. BlueTengu.com, btengu on Twitter, Facebook.com Blue Tengu Studio, all one word. YouTube.com Blue Tengu Studio for those of you watching the live stream now, and Twitch TV Blue Tengu for those of you watching us on YouTube. And the game we're making is Project Spaghetti, which is a top-down 2D cowboy shooter where the bullets fired bounce around the screen with a pinball mechanic, and we were talking about that a little bit before the break, how it kind of resembles Mr. Do, the mechanic in there. And Bone Crusher came back to me with an answer on the question for the Commodore 64 game, so let me show that. Aliens, yes. Great game. So let's get to a point where there is actually some action. Yes, it was a good mix of different games. I never actually had this myself, but I did see someone playing it before. And it is one I do want to play, actually. So if I do find it somewhere, I think I'm going to have to try and play it, because it just looked awesome. And of course it's aliens, which is always awesome. Speaking of the Lynx, the Jaguar, and Aliens versus Predator on that. Aliens has always been fun. Even when games are less than stellar, it's still Aliens. I have to try Colonial Marine and see how that is as well. But yes, this is making me very nostalgic for this and making me want to play it. All of these things that Der Schmoo, by the way, awesome person who puts all of these long plays of Commodore 64 games up there. I'm actually subscribed as well. All the long plays of Commodore 64 games, and seeing them off to the right here makes me want to just go through them one by one, but I do have to get to work. Ghostbusters, yes. Have to get to work, so let's keep that to the side for when the show's done, and I'll watch that, see if I can find Aliens. By the way, for Commodore 64 fans, if you played this game on the Commodore 64, good old Bruce Lee, there is, in addition to a remake for the PC out there, there's also a sequel that you can play on the PC. So look for Bruce Lee 2 if you're interested in that, if you did play the original Bruce Lee game on the Commodore 64, because the sequel is out there and playable on the PC. I have no idea about whether it's official, unofficial, or not, so if it's illegal, I'm sorry. And Bone Crusher did mention you have Colonial Marines. How is it? I hear great things about it, so I hope it's good. I usually wait for things to drop in price on Steam because they always do. Well, almost always do. Unfortunately, I'm in Japan, so sometimes if a publisher's involved, like unfortunately if Sega's involved, usually they never drop the prices here, even though it's always going on sale in the States. We'll see. So first thing, sound effect. The thing PandaBits mentioned. Having a sound effect for when the enemies make that transition is a good idea. Thought about doing it in VFXR, which is a really simple tool to make sounds. A lot of people use it, especially Ludum Dare is coming up, so if any of you are interested in that. If you do want to make a game and you don't want to devote more than a weekend to it, Ludum Dare is for you. The next one is April 17th, which is 2 weeks from now, that weekend. And the theme is slaughter. So as long as you make a game over the weekend with the theme of slaughter, you can do the Ludum Dare. But a lot of people in Ludum Dare do use this tool, VFXR. There's also the web version. But basically you can pick the sound that you want, like pickups, buttons. Makes it for you. You can kind of tweak these things as long as you know what you're doing. You can also mutate it if it's not quite the right sound you want. But more than a sound effect, I probably do need a jingle. So actually, I'm not going to use BFXR. I'm going to use Linux Multimedia Studio, which I've used to make all the music for the show, for example, and that jingle for the game, the level start jingle. Let's see if I can find it. Which one is it? Trying to remember. I should probably name these things in a way that actually makes sense to me. Jingle, 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 jangle, Western Riot, Upright Cowboy, High Noon Showdown, Jangle Spurs. It should be really short. Oh wow, this is going to be really hard on my small screen to show you guys, but hopefully we'll do it. That's not the jingle, but let's see what it is. Has the instruments I want. Like probably what I'm going to try to use in the game overall is this DSK acoustic guitar, the harmonica, those kind of things, because they sound very Western. That was just an experiment, obviously. The thing I want is when you play the game right now, when the level starts, there's a jingle. There, that doo-doo-doo-doo sound that shows up. I think I did that in LMMS. And let's see. Unmonk drops by and says, I blame midgets. Okay. Feel free to expand on that. But welcome, Unmonk. Appreciate anybody who drops by the show, even if they do blame midgets. And Bone Crusher says, I like multiplayer and Bug Hunt DLC more than single player as the story isn't really good. Okay, well that's unfortunate with Colonial Marines. The single player is what I'm most interested in because I'm too much of a coward for multiplayer in general. Probably going to have a post on the site about anti-social behavior in multiplayer games and how to alleviate that. But I talk about my aversion to multiplayer in general. But there's sometimes when I do like multiplayer. Obviously co-op, I always love co-op, but multiplayer, it kind of depends on the crowd. But single player is what I always like about games the most. Let's see, if Cowboy Fanfare, that might be it. That might be my jingle that I'm using right now, if everything shows up. Fortunately, it's very crowded, so who knows whether everything will show up or not. Not sure what's going on here. Maybe it's a memory issue. Let's try loading it again. Well, that's unfortunate. Project does not seem to be showing up properly. There we go. Okay, so Cowboy Fanfare. This seems to be the game over one. But I can use this as a base. Yeah, it's Dying Jingle. Okay, so I've got the other jingles in here too. Yes, I've got all my jingles in here, so let's add a new one. What instrument am I using? Oh yes, the guitar. So let's add a jingle for, if I can get the name right, day transition. Day transition? Time transition. Transition jingle. Okay. And this is the DSK acoustic guitar by DSK Music as a plugin. Not sure if that's properly sounding for you guys. Doesn't sound like it's sounding for me. Hopefully. Oh, because I probably have it muted. Well, there we go. Simple acoustic guitar. So let's see. Need to do something different, obviously. It probably needs to be threatening because the player is going to be threatened by this. I do need to up the volume on my speakers here so I can hear it. Alright. So that's not bad, actually, because it's a game over thing, but it needs to be quicker and it needs to be darker. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time with this. I can use placeholder and then fix it later. Do 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 do, something like that. Let me get my scale in here actually, if I can get it in here. Let's see if I can remember how to do this. I think there was, yeah, mark current scale. So let's do that. Major scale. I want D major if I can do that. Mark current scale. Well, let's see. That's not what I want. I want a different scale out of this. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Now I'm going crazy. 1/16. Major scale. I could swear there was a way to choose the D scale, as I posted about it before. And PandaBits came back after a break. Are you making a pizza, perhaps? Yes, what I'm doing now is instead of using BFXR to make just a quick sound effect, I'm trying to make a jingle like you mentioned for when the day-night transition happens. And as a bass, I'm using this as a bass. But I do want to fix things around. It would have been nice to see the scale, but I'm not going to worry about it. Let's unmark all. Because I am using D major, but I can't find where to set the D part of the D major here. Oh, maybe if I just do it here. Okay, there we go. Mark current scale. There we go. In general, I'm using D major. Apparently not there. So let's see. D, boom, 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 boom. Put this down there. Need to make this sound pretty sinister. Yeah, that second part's really good. First part's a little bit too bright, so let's bring that down a bit. By the way, I know absolutely nothing about making music, so if it sounds like I do, stay tuned. You'll find out that I don't. Yeah, that's not bad. That's pretty dark. But I basically just follow scales. In Linux Multimedia Studio, there's a good way to cheat and kind of make music by using scales. Like if you use the major scale like C major, D major, I'm sure even if you don't know anything about music, you've heard people say C major and something something in F minor, things like that. All that is it's just an arrangement of notes that sound pleasant together. So, for example, if pretty much any combination you do with these notes, as long as you follow the lines, it's going to be somewhat pleasant. If you use a lot of sounds like this, it sounds bad. Usually, there's some rules where you can kind of get around that. Obviously, breaking the rules is what proper musicians can do to actually make new music, but I'm not a proper musician, so I don't know enough to break rules, so I have to follow them. But let's see. That's not too bad. That's a little bit. Let's see if I can get it a little more sinister. Alright, let's go with that. And Bone Crusher mentions you play instruments, so I'm sure this is torture on your ears and your sensibilities. Hope I'm doing okay. What instruments do you play? If you do play the guitar, I'll definitely be interested to hear what you think of the music in the future. But I am just getting away with kind of using a D major scale, and that's not bad. Alright, that'll be good for now anyway. I could probably try to fiddle with it later. Let's see, export tracks. Yes, there we go. No, that's not what I want to do. Export, just regular export. There we go. And let's go with OGG and desktop. Actually, I have been using waves the whole time, but maybe I should use OGG. It's something I should go and do later. OGG. Alright, let's projects. Yeah, I guess it is BGM, right? Yeah. Alright, I'll keep it wave for now. I can think about doing it OGG because I think GameMaker Studio converts all the waves to OGG anyway, but maybe it's better to not let GameMaker do that for me and do it here first. Let's call this something like Sundown. And that should be okay, I don't know. That probably doesn't matter for the level of music I'm using, but just to keep it consistent. And I don't need a loop version. Probably better to have that silence at the end, and there we go. So that's a taste of Linux Multimedia Studio. And I should be able to just bring it in right away. Sounds, BGM group, Jingle. Let's duplicate this so I have a good base. Now let's call this BGM Sundown. And open up that file. BGM Sundown, there we go. Everything should be okay. Let's make sure it plays. Alright, it plays. BGM Sundown. Compressed. Okay, all the other ones are MP3s, that's why. Instead of WAV files. Yeah, let's make it an MP3. Alright. Just to keep consistent with what I'm doing elsewhere. I think I was using Audacity to convert these. Feels like I'm doing way too much with this stuff, but yep. And export MP3. It's going to convert it to something else anyway, so I'm probably doing too many conversions. In the future, I'll clean this up and actually make these all just OGG files right off the bat. Tengu, there we go. Sundown, as if this information's ever going to make it out into the world. 2015 genre video game. Alright. There we go. And did that actually convert this? Yes. Alright. There we go. Let's use that one instead, just to keep consistent. Make sure it still works. Alright. There we go. Now it's red like all the other ones because it's using MP3. So it should work with my background music script. So I just have to play it when the sun goes down. Let's see, SCR play BGM once. That's the script I want to use. Should be okay. SCR play BGM once. Room manager. So when time elapses, let's play that. SCR play BGM once. And it's called BGM Sundown. One word. Hopefully that does what I need it to do. But we'll find out soon enough. Yeah, for the last one, that's just going to be the game over one anyway, so that should be okay. Let's try it out. Let's see, a stage where enemies come out fast. Let's try this. I need to drop my speakers down a little bit now. Ghosts are pretty easy to kill. Let's do that. Or ghosts are pretty easy to keep alive because they don't shoot. Name moon. Oh, well, there we go. I need to do it on the town level because there's no moon object yet. Alright, well, town level it is. I'll do my best to keep everyone alive. And give myself invincibility there. So all the enemies have to come out before the time starts to pass. But once time starts moving, it should move pretty quick because it's still in debug mode, where it's only like 5 seconds or something before time, you know, the sun elapses and monsters change and stuff. Keep at least a couple of them alive. Okay, it played. It's not very loud. Not very loud, but it does play. Might be worth upping the volume on it, but let's not worry about that now. So there is a sound effect now. It's a little quiet. Have to worry about that. And Panovitz mentions, well, let me get to Bone Crusher. Bone Crusher did get back to me on what instruments. He played guitar, piano, alto sax, tenor sax, harmonica, drums, and baritone sax. That's a lot of instruments. Since you have a saxophone bass, did you learn saxophone on your own, or was that a school thing, like kind of a band class thing? Because guitar and piano, I think a lot of people do learn on their own and stuff. But I think saxophone and like a lot of the brass instruments are things that people kind of learn in classes and things. I'm just kind of curious about your background because I've tried to learn guitar on my own. I got up to being able to play Happy Birthday on the guitar. That's about all I got. Piano-wise, I could play like Star Wars sheet music and things like that. That's about as far as I got with that stuff. Enough to know what notes are, but that's as far as my musical education ever went. Just self-taught stuff. Unfortunately, I was stupid. In high school, I had the opportunity to either choose band or gym class, and even though I'm like the world's worst person at sports, you could probably tell. I mean, I'm obviously a game nerd. For some reason, I chose to go with gym class when I could have actually learned an instrument. I have no idea why I did that, and I regret it. So, note to any of you who might be in high school, if you do get the choice, choose band. Because there's not much you learn in gym class. If you're interested in sports, you might as well join a team. Not much point in gym class other than to have a class where you don't have to do anything for it, homework wise. And Pandavits does mention that the jingle could be more ominous. Yeah, it could be more ominous and it could be longer. It does need to transition into the background music playing faster. There's no background music in the game right now because I haven't made it yet, but theoretically when the sun starts going down, the music picks up. And Bone Crusher did mention alto learned in school, the rest learned by myself. Okay, well that's absolutely fantastic. That is a good range of instruments. Which one do you play now, for example? Like if you have free time, is it the guitar, the piano, or is it a saxophone? So let's jump to the task list. There is a jingle now. I do need to brush that up. Change the fence color. Let's do that real quick because that fence is awful as it is right now. Very, very difficult to tell the sun is going down behind it because it's the same color. Could change the actual sun color to have more like reds and oranges in it, but I think it's better to change the fence. So let's see, fence, there we go. And where's my color I need? Let's go with a orange because there's too many brown buildings too. Let's see, that would, yeah, it's gonna be better. But what I need to do is to make sure there is kind of that very defined border. I need to have this be a different color. And let's change the fence. Okay. And let's see, this is everything, but I don't want everything. I just want the buildings because those are the ones with the fence. So let's grab that PNG file. Town buildings, there we go. Yes, good. Okay. Now let's bring that into the game. Pandavits does mention a good idea of making the fence white. That is actually a good idea. Am I too late to do that? No, I should be okay. Let me do that. Because white is actually a color I don't use very much in the game. For some reason. And it'll help it stand out against the back buildings there. So let's do that. Good suggestion. I need to get my Commodore 64 official white, which I think is just white. Let's see, I can probably open recent. I'm sure it'll be in here. Yes, there we go. Grab my white and fill in the fence. Alright, let's see how this goes. Love the suggestions from you guys. Alright, let's try white. And Bone Crusher, the thing you play most often now is the tenor sax. So that's interesting. So, for example, I'm not very familiar with all of the differences between saxophones. Obviously, alto, tenor, like the ranges are different, but because I've never played them myself, I don't know how they feel different. Like, for example, even though you are able to play the different saxophones, why do you like the tenor sax? That would actually be very interesting to find out, because not knowing much about music, I'm just fascinated by people that do know a lot about music. I hassle a lot of like sound designers on game design teams and stuff. They probably want me to go away. Like, yeah, shove off. I'm trying to do work, but I always pester sound designers to try and shore up my lack of knowledge about sound in general. Let's see, buildings, buildings, buildings. That's right, it's a sprite now, so it's in a different place. Let's get rid of the sounds. Buildings, let's load in that sprite. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to edit it down again, but that should be okay for now. Buildings, and then I have to edit it to cut off that extra bit at the bottom. I think up and 70 was the number. Yes, there we go. All right, let's try it with white, as Pandavit suggested. Yeah, that stands out. Might not blend in well enough, but if I put maybe an edge around it, it might not look as off. Right now it does look a little strange because it's just pure white, but I think if I add little touches in there, the white might work really well. I have to think about that. What do you think? Do you like the white? It might be kind of hard for you guys to tell because you don't have the game right in front of you, but hopefully it's big enough in your stream so you can see it. Okay, we got the enemies out. And he transitioned. And he froze. So he's still doing the freezing thing, but we've got the fence. Alright. So we do have changed the fence color. And enemies stop on instance change. So this is what I have to start debugging now. It might be worth calling it an episode because that could be something that takes a really long time to debug, but let's take a quick look. When an enemy is created, they get all of this stuff, which is just variables. That's nothing big. But the stuff that's going on is SCR enemy create. That's probably what's creating all the pathing stuff. So let's see, SCR enemy create. Is there anything in here that could be causing that pause before they start moving? And Pandavits does get back to me on the white. It does give a good boundary on the top. It definitely does because it stands out, so it does separate the backgrounds. It actually feels like a gameplay element being up there. So it could be good just as white. Yeah, and don't worry about spelling. I can't spell any time as well. And Bone Crusher did mention with the saxophone, the tenor sax, it's a good range between low and high sounds. Really good in a lot of songs. And before you forget, also play violin. Also play violin. Sheesh. Oh, I wish I had your musical talent. It'd make things so much easier than what I'm doing now in Linux Multimedia Studio. I so regret gym class for multiple reasons. And Bone Crusher does also mention on the fence, if it was a tad darker, it would look really nice as well. Yeah, I'll think about it. Maybe it would just be enough to add a little color border around it as well. But for now, I'll keep it white. Let's see, the start shooting delay. There is a shoot delay before the enemies can start shooting, which is good. The enemy path is created. All the bumpers are added. The move node is set to -1, which means they don't have a place to move. For those of you who haven't, Pandavits will know this, and I think Bone Crusher might know it as well, but for some of you who haven't seen it before, the way it works is all these little purple triangles in the room are move nodes. If the enemy has a move node, it tries to get there using a pathing system. If it's set to -1, that means that it doesn't have a move node, which means it's not going to move, obviously. So that's the first thing. Target lead. So the move node is set to -1, so it doesn't have a place to go yet when it's first created. But let's see. Bad cowboy. Well, I have to look at enemy, I suppose. In the step, as long as it's not frozen, which it isn't, as long as it's not dodging, aiming its gun, or dead, then it should come down here into the move calculation part, which is where all the pathing is. What it should do, I guess, is turn on this debug switch, which is the F1 key in the game, so I can get some of these messages in here to figure out when it's calculating move nodes. So let's see, if it's stuck, it's not going to be stuck right off the bat because it's just starting. And there is no EM move node yet. So it shouldn't come into here. Or EM move node is equal to 0. Maybe this is what's causing it. Maybe when I expect move node to be empty, I'm expecting it to be 0 instead of -1. Kind of worried if I change this to -1 because maybe there is some place where I'm setting it to 0. So what I'm going to do, hopefully this doesn't screw the entire game up. Always a risk. Let's do less than or equal to 0 to make sure it comes in here and finds a new node. Maybe that's enough to get it working. Let's find out. Please be enough to get it working and not break the entire game. Alright, so level 1, 8. And I do have to wait for the enemies to come out. So let's kill a few of them. Otherwise it's going to be chaos. And I have invincibility turned on. Let's also hit F1 so I can get those debug messages. There we go. So there's my pathing grid. It's all the debug stuff. So this will also give me some good information about what's happening when all the enemies are out there. And they change. Okay, that did work. That was all that was needed. Great. Awesome. So now they don't stop. If anything, it's weird that they don't stop, because they instantly transform into a new enemy. They instantly find a new node. They instantly start walking somewhere, which is fine, but probably do want to give the player just a little bit of a pause there when everyone transitions, because like you saw with the Mr. Do's Castle example, the monsters do kind of sit there and like shimmy a bit before they change into a new one, just to kind of show they're powering up. Might be a good idea to do that, because right now the graphics are so simple, obviously, that it's just a quick color change. So if you're not knowing it's coming, you might not even know that the enemy changed on you. So it's probably good to throw a little bit of what they would call in Japanese enshitsu, a little bit of drama in there, I guess. But there we go. Let's close Audacity out. I don't need to save the changes. So I think we got that bug fixed at least. So let's put that over here. That was good. That actually worked out a lot faster than I thought it would, which is nice when that does happen. And just as a note, yes, enemies flash before changing types. This will probably tie into exactly what I was just talking about, showing the enemy just kind of flashing a little bit before they change into a new type, just to give that player that much more visual feedback that things are changing. One thing I do realize now that I do have to do, and this might be a big task because there's a lot of things that are using color. I mentioned it at the beginning of the season, but there are a lot of colorblind players out there, and if I'm using colors as information, I have to have something for them beyond color to tell the difference between enemies and bullets and stuff like that. So this is kind of an overall task, really. It's going to involve the graphics, it's going to involve game design, but I don't want to shut colorblind players out of this game. So I want to put that over in there, but just so I don't forget, because I'm not colorblind myself, so it's an easy thing to forget about. Oh, okay, this enemy's green, this enemy's pink. Same with sound effects, you know. There are players who can't hear, or for example, who want the volume turned down so they can listen to their music. So assuming that sound effects are going to be cues is not enough. It has to be visual and audio. So I have to keep reminding myself of that as well. One thing in here I do want to mention before kind of going over the tasks that we did today. Visualize the super shot timing with a flash of the gun as a task in here. But what I've been thinking is, let me explain what the super shot is. You'll notice when I shoot in the upper left, let me turn invincibility on. In the upper left, that bullet chamber flashes red for a brief period of time after you shoot. When it does that, if I can not get hit while doing this, if you fire while it's red, you get an instant red bullet out of it, but that system was made before I did this, which is the charging. I'm holding the button down and charging. So it's kind of a superfluous system, like why would you want a red bullet? And a lot of times it just kind of comes out of the gun without thinking, so it doesn't really make much sense as a system now. So I think I want to get rid of this. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that I'll probably get rid of that. It's just not something that works. Originally it was inspired by the Gears of War active reload, but there's not enough visual feedback for the player to really know that that's a system, and there is the charge system, so it's kind of something that's just going to be confusing, so I want to get rid of that. But enemies flashing before changing types is something I do want to do as well, and get them to stop moving, so I should put a comment in there about that. Could probably do that in their create event anyway, because they show up too fast anyway. So that's something. But let's see. Wrapping up what we did today. Thanks you guys, by the way, for all your help today. Got the sun and the moon in there. Don't actually have the moon stages or anything working because I have to change all the graphics to do that, but I can start working on that. The enemies, the visuals do change when the time crunch starts. They actually it's more enemy types change. Types change when the time crunch starts now. Did break the graphics up so that there's the sky, there's the buildings, there's the dirt. Broke those up. Also, thanks to Pandabit's suggestion, did add a day-night jingle. Might have to work on that a little bit. Did change the fence color. We'll see how it works. I may get used to it. It's probably just because I'm used to the old color. And also debugged the fact that the enemies just stopped on instance change because they didn't have any node to work with. So that was pretty good. Episode 40, Bad Moon Rising. If you saw the animated short, you know why it's called that. Didn't actually get a moon in the game except for a sprite, but there we go. And episode 41. I don't have a title for it, obviously, but let's think about what we want to do next week. Move that over to maybe around 3. I think at some point I'd remember. All right, 3 it is. So next week, let's see. Objects create glow at night. I'll have to think about this one. It's going to kind of depend on what it looks like when the sun's going down. So that's something I kind of want to save for later. So, Pandabits, if you're still out there, this one's for you. The Crazy Challenge Mode Puzzle Rooms. I think you voted on this one, because there is the vote in there. What these are, yes, from episode 19. Here's the comment that was on the YouTube video at the time. Wonder how crazy it could get if there was a little challenge mode where the screen is about 30% cacti, which are the ones that fire the bullets if you hit them, the bumpers. And the enemies are the ghosts. So you have cacti bumpers mixed with ghosts, and you have to activate a bell. You strike the bell, the bullet bounces off the bell into like cacti, and then those start firing out, and maybe those hit the bell too. And bats are coming down when the bell's ringing and things like that. Suddenly it's a bullet hell game. I think that's an awesome idea. Yes, okay, and Pandabits, yes, you did mention that you were the one that made the comment. Yeah, I see it now. But I think that's an awesome idea. And not just for, ghosts and cacti, but other things as well. Like what happens if you have aliens mixed with bad cowboys, mixed with Christmas tree bumpers, or, aliens mixed with snowmen and stuff like that. Having all those kind of challenge rooms would be very interesting because it would throw a little bit of a completely new strategy into the mechanics, because now you have multiple enemy types to worry about. And I think that would just be an awesome gameplay element. And I love that idea, and I do want to put it in there. So it was originally in the Reach tasks, but I brought it up. I think that's what we want to work on. I have it at 6 hours, but to be honest, I have usually paid attention to the way enemies interact with other enemies in terms of, what would happen if a snowman gets hit by a laser, what's the collision thing. I think for the most part I have that stuff in there, so it shouldn't be too bad. I think what we'll have to do is just create a couple of levels, throw everything in them, and just see what doesn't work, and kind of patch it up as we go. I think that's going to be the big thing. Actually, making the levels will be something else, but just to see what systems are not working with other systems, because they've never had to work with each other before. But I think that's what we'll do next week. So thank you, PandaBits, again for the suggestion. That was awesome. And jump off the desktop. And let me get my times here. I need to always have my times because I don't want to give you the wrong ones. There we go. Got my times. So thank you for watching the Game Development Show. You can catch past episodes in this one once it goes up over at www.youtube.com. Blue Tengu Studio, all one word. And if you're watching this later on YouTube, come drop by the live show we do every week on Twitch TV Blue Tengu. Those times are, if you're in the Americas, Fridays 4 to 6 Pacific, 5 to 7 Mountain, 6 to 8 Central, 7 to 9 Eastern. If you're in the UK, goes from 11 p.m. Friday night to 1 a.m. Saturday morning. So if you're in Europe, try to figure out your times based on that, I guess. If you're in Japan with me, it's the same time I am. So it's Saturday mornings from 8 to 10. And if you're in Australia, which is pretty close to Japan in terms of time zones, it starts from 8 to 10 depending on where you live. And if you're in New Zealand, it starts at 11 Saturdays, depending on, well, I guess New Zealand's small enough where it doesn't depend on where you live. It's 11 a.m. But we do always announce what we're doing through Twitter. So easiest way to know when the show's going on is, well, obviously subscribing on Twitch or YouTube is one way to do it. But follow BTengu to keep track of when the live show starts or episodes go up, or follow us on Twitch or YouTube, like I said. And of course, you can see what we're up to anytime over at www.bluetengu.com. Thank you for watching. Let me see. Catch up to the chat one more time. And Bone Crusher does mention cowboys versus aliens. Yes, that will happen. Because there are aliens and there are cowboys, so that will happen. Awesome. So I will get a cowboys versus aliens then going next week. But thank you guys for watching. Thank you, PandaBits, Bone Crusher, Decent Scrimp, and someone who mentioned something about midgets. Sorry, I don't remember your name at the moment. But thank you guys for jumping into the chat, and thank you guys who are lurking and just watching. I don't check your names or anything, since sometimes you just want to chill out and watch. That's cool, no problem, but I do love it when you jump in the chat. So send me messages, send me email, whatever you want. And I hope to see you guys next week. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time.